How many are you familiar with the theta chamber? It's not part of Solex.
Yes.
Okay. Theta chamber is a device I developed in 1986 for my son. It was just for him. It wasn't a business at that time. But it changed my son's life to now he was born with cerebral palsy. He's now 43 years old. He's an accountant, a massage therapist. He speaks 5 languages, and he has no CV. Oh, and he's a second-degree black belt. Anyway, the theta chamber is a chamber that you get into. You lay down, and it spins. And it spins at 12.7 RPMs, which is 12 and a half, 12.7 frames a second. And that's to stimulate the inner ear. But in there, we also have visual stimulation, audio stimulation, cranial stimulation, as well as magnetic field through the mat, and a few other things that the theta chamber does to communicate with the brain. And so when we put someone in, hook them all up, we hit a button, and the computer and the brain, or the person's brain, are having a two-way conversation the whole time. And it's pretty amazing. Those of you who have tried the theta chamber, you know what it feels like. Well, we decided we would take part of the theta chamber and make it available through Solex, and that's what we call the hub. So it's not the theta chamber, but it's a very important part of the theta chamber. Unless you're going to stand up and spin like a spurling date, you're not going to get the inner ear movement. But you're going to get the visual, the auditory, the cranial stimulation. And when that happens, you're actually helping the brain create new neural pathways. So if you have an addiction, and we all have addictions, trust me, the ones we know of are drugs and alcohol and sex and women shopping.
Showdown.
But any addiction is an activity that we do that we don't have control over. Okay, and our brain gets used to this way of thinking and working, and it creates a very strong alpha neural pathway. And when you try to go against it, it fights, and it fights like hell. That's why addictions are so hard to overcome. Well, the stimulation that we're doing right here on the ears was developed by a neurosurgeon by the name of Margaret Patterson. She passed away in 2006. She was a neurosurgeon out of Aberdeen, Scotland, and she was employed by the U.S. military back in the Vietnam War days. So we're talking a long time ago, back in the 60s and early 70s. And she found that if she put 2 little electrodes on the earlobes and put in specific frequencies, she can take the addiction to morphine completely away in 10 days. Cocaine, pain, all sorts of things. Some of you may know these names. Mick Jagger, Boy George, Eric Clapton, Ted Nugent. Do any of those names ring a bell? Okay. All of those 4 will tell you that they owe their life to Margaret Patterson and her little black box.
Huh.
And so when I had my clinic in Mexico, she had a clinic in Mexico. And that's how we ended up getting all this technology. She's a beautiful woman. But what she found was the ability to talk to the brain, to make a new neural pathway that would eventually overcome the old neural pathway. And so all of a sudden, the addiction wasn't there. She fought for 35 years, and I don't know how many millions, but I know it was between $8 and $10 million to get it approved through the FDA.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they were using it in the military, but they wouldn't allow anybody else to have it. And so I've had 2 dances with the FDA. I lost everything I owned in the first dance. The second dance, I won, but damn near lost everything I owned in the process. And so we play by the rules now so that we can all play.
Yep.
This technology in the hub is not a toy, and it's not a gimmick. It's been in practical use since 1980. 66. That's longer than some of you are old.
Don't work the math out.
The point is, it's a way for you in your own home to be able to help you become better at you. Addictions, depression, anxiety, suicidal tendencies, those are things that you can deal with by just giving the information to the brain that it needs to say, you know what, I think I can get from A to B in the brain a little better and faster than the way we're doing it. And for the first 3 or 4 times you do it, it's great. You see beautiful colors. You have this neuro-orgasmic experience. It's pretty cool. Day 4 or 5 or 6, all of a sudden it says, I don't like this. This isn't working. I want to stop. I don't like this. And what's actually happening is the old neural pathway is not liking the young guy. And they start to fight. And it's a fight. And it can last 3 or 4 days. But I will tell you, every single time, the little guy wins. Every single time. He's like David fighting Goliath, and he wins every time. But getting through that 3 or 4 times, that 3 or 4 sessions, can sometimes be a challenge. And then all of a sudden, it's like the heavens parted, the light comes in, and everything's wonderful. But it takes 21 to 28 days for the brain to create a new neural pathway. To create it. Now, depending on the circumstances in your life, you may need to use it a lot more after that to help let that neural pathway get its full grip. Okay? I'm going to give you an example. If I was to give you a big hit of heroin, okay? Actually, I'm not going to use you because that's not fair. I'm going to use a guy. If I was to give any guy in this room a big hit of heroin, I would stimulate this side of his brain right here. And if I was to look at that on a PET scan, there would be a very active part of his brain right there, about the size of a U.S. quarter. I don't know what that would be here.
Yeah, 10-cent piece.
20p, okay. So now, we let your high go away and everything go away, and then I put you down and I put on some virtual reality glasses and I show you all sorts of porn. Same area of the brain is going to fire up. It'll be about the size of a freaking orange. Same area of the brain being stimulated. But the heroin was only this big and the porn was this big. Okay? I can take, when I say I can take, I should never say that. That stimulation can take somebody that has a heroin addiction off heroin easily in 3 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks. Maybe have to have a come back 2 or 3 times in the next 6 months. But get the brain to get rid of pornography, it takes 9 months.
Wow.
Now, you want to know what's close to pornography? Gaming. And shopping. Okay? Not 9 months, but definitely not 4 weeks.
Right.
Okay, so these addictions that we think are innocuous are not. Because whenever we overstimulate one part of the brain, guess what happens to the other parts of the brain?
They shrink.
They get retarded. I don't mean that in that way. They get reduced in their function, okay? And so this is really important. So to have this type of a tool in your home to where you can actually make a physiological change is mind-blowing.
Literally.
It is absolutely amazing. And so now we talked about the extremes. There's other things that can do. Let's just say you don't have any of those addictions. But maybe you're a workaholic. Maybe you're a victim in your mind, right? Now, we all know what that is, right? We've all been there at some time in our life. I'm the victim, woe is me type thing, right? All of these things can be benefited from this type of stimulation to the brain. Are you starting to get the idea of why we felt this was such a good thing to bring?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
The theta chamber is $78,500 US. I'm not exactly sure, but I think the hub is around
3,000 US.
Now, it is not, I don't know where that is, but anyway. but it's
Where it is,
still-
I thought.
It's not the theta chamber, but it is a part of the brain of the theta chamber. Now, what the theta chamber can do that the hub can't, is it can't have that constant communication back and forth between the computer and the brain. Okay, it can't have it, it has an initial start, then it checks in like 3 times in that 30 minutes. In the theta chamber, it's nonstop, continuous communication. So when we see brainwaves starting to drift out of their target, it'll completely make that change. But let me tell you some things that the hub does that the theta chamber doesn't do. We call it a hub because it has the ability to attach additional items to it. We showed at Day of Discovery lasers. Those are going to be available to you real soon as well. To give you an idea, there's the lasers, there's 6 of them, 3 of them infrared, and then the other red, blue, and green.
Yeah.
They're medical grade laser diodes. We import them from Japan. These are not LED pointers. Okay, these are true medical grade lasers, which basically means that the wavelength of that LED is within a plus or minus 5 nanometers from what it says. So if it's supposed to be a 630, it will not be higher than 635. It will not, 632 and a half or 2.5 below that, between 660. So it's a very tight wavelength. It's very strong. 660 is one you'll use a lot. 1064 is in the infrared range, and that one is almost magic. Now, we bought one of those for our clinic. Now, granted, it's a more powerful laser, but we spent $3,700 for that one laser, okay? And all of these, I think, are gonna be right around, I know they're less than $1,000, but for all 6. And I don't know exactly when they're gonna be available, but I do know it'll be soon after that. Another one that's really important that will be an add-on to this is a thing called an RTMS. Does anybody know what that is?
She does.
RTMS is rapid transcranial magnetic stimulation. Now I'm going to tell you just a little bit about that, and then I want to tell you a story about it. Are we doing okay on time?
Doesn't matter, doesn't
No
matter.
one cares.
No one cares, do they?
Okay, so RTMS has multiple coils around the head. There's one on the top, and there's 7 around the perimeter. Inside each one of those little silicon tubes is a magnetic coil. And then that feeds down into a little junction box, which feeds into the hub, and you have your software on your computer. This is amazing for any type of neurological dysfunction, whether it's motor skill issues, whether it's memory issues, whether it's traumatic brain injury. It's absolutely amazing. Autism is another one that it's amazing for. So you'll have a program that comes up, and there's about 28 different programs, from schizophrenia to get my coffee. It's an absolutely amazing tool. You pick your program, put your headset on, sit back, and let it do its thing. You won't feel a thing. So that's why we have to give you a little vial with a magnet in it, so you can hold it there and see the magnet bounce, to know that something's actually happening. But That's what it is. Now, we sell one of those through Energy. If you ever go to our Energy website, you'll see it. It's like $12,500. Well, that add-on to the hub is gonna be less than 2,500.
Wow.
And it does everything that the 12,500 one does. Okay? Now let me tell you a story. Have you ever heard of Milton Bradley Games? In the US, they're everywhere. Okay. One of the main, well, he wasn't the main, he was the principal game developer back in the 60s and 70s and even into the 80s for Milton Bradley Games. Absolutely brilliant the way he could put together a game. Absolutely autistic. No emotion. When his mother tripped and fell down a flight of stairs, he laughed. Had never cried in his life. Could not carry on a conversation more than 5 or 6 words. When he was asked to develop a game, he was the guy. And you can see his whole story. I don't know whether you can see it down here, but it was on a Discovery Channel. And if you Google, that, you'll find his story. I'll cut to the chase. He's now in his late 50s when this happened, and RTMS was available. And they did an RTMS session on him. The second session he cried.
Wow.
By his 3rd or 4th session, he was able to carry on a conversation with anybody. And now you'd never know he was anything but, as we call it, normal. There's not one of us in this room that's normal. RTMS is powerful because, again, all that it's doing, and I'm not going to yell at you, but imagine I just did. It's a whisper to the brain. It encourages the brain to fix what's not connecting. If you were to go outside and throw a ball at each other, one throws, one catches, one throws, one catches, as long as the guy on the other end is catching the ball and throwing it back to you, you're happy. But when you throw it and he never catches it, and when he throws it to you, he throws it off sideways, pretty soon you're done. It's okay, I'm not playing with you anymore. That's kind of what's going on in the brain. Those synapses are firing, those neurons are going, and there's a lot of pitchers, but there's no catchers. And so there's frustration, that parts of the brain shut down, and that when that happens, part of our ability to function shuts down. RTMS helps create and fix that.
Nice.